one were to do a postmortem, at the face of it, it's one-way traffic. There's a 13% vote share difference between Mahayuti and Mahavikas Aghadi.
Is this the new Congress approach in states? I mean, across the board, the way they're basically staying afloat is partnering with local parties. Is this the only way Congress gets power now?
With respect to the BJP, I think, or the Mahayuti, I think the success was because they were not directionally opposed to each other, although they were maybe, in degree terms different from one another.
Is it that the voter is really not interested in taking the long view? It's kind of like this is what I need right now. And if there's a cash transfer scheme that is providing immediate support and relief, that's working for me for now. And then I'll take a call later around the next election. Is it that?
Welcome to episode 34 of the India Dialogue. We're so grateful you're here. My name is Ruchir. I'm joined by my co-hosts Mitali and Manu and a special guest. I'll introduce all of them now. Mitali, as you all know, is a former journalist. Is a journalist, I'm sorry. Known for her time from CNBC, that's what I meant to say, and an author, is the acting director at the Reuters Institute. Manu is an advocate and a lawyer with his own law practice and is a spokesperson for DMK. Vignesh, who joins us today, is an author in waiting on the Dravidian pathway. He's also a postdoc in Leiden, who's doing research on Indian campaign finance. So we thought it'd be really appropriate we bring him on for discussion on a week of elections. We've just had results come through from Maharashtra and Jharkhand. A little bit of context before I pass on the baton. India Dialogue is about going deep in issues that matter to India every week. We normally talk about issues that matter amongst friends, sometimes with friendly disagreements, but really to explore issues in a way that is not just about shouting matches, but really respects different ideas. Manu will take us through the big story of the week, the election results from Maharashtra and Jharkhand. Manu?
Fantastic. Thank you, Ruchir. If I might add a couple of more lines on Vignesh. So as you rightly said, he's completed his a doctoral thesis and now is a postdoc fellow researching on election finance. But he's also spent a lot of time working with the leading political campaign institutions and organizations in India. So I thought it would be very apt to hear his 8 or 9 cents on what's happened in the last week and the election outcomes, especially in Maharashtra. I think Jharkhand will come to maybe in the latter part of this discussion. But Vignesh, thank you for joining us today. And some of this, we want to take you back to the pieces you've written for Times of India. But before we go to that, let me quickly give an update on what's happened, in case anybody hasn't followed the results. So there were two major alliances, as you know, one led by the BJP, but had the breakaway Shiv Sena and the breakaway NCP factions, which of course is contested. They claim to be the real Shiv Sena and real NCP, led by Eknath Shinde and Ajit Pawar, respectively. And of course, you have on the other side the Congress, the Shiv Sena, Uddhav Thackeray, and the NCP led by Sharad Pawar. So you had the Mahavikas Aghadi and the Mahayuti, right? So you had these two alliances. And of course, it was very hard to predict because first things first, the last election was fought along different lines in terms of pre-poll alliances. And then there were changes after the election results. And then there were further changes, midway through the term when there were sort of breakaway factions and whatnot. So it was really hard to say that who has claim to the real NCP or the Shiv Sena, or who did the voters regard. Now, to put it very simplistically, the results of the election seem to indicate that the NCP and the Shiv Sena that aligned with the BJP seem to have the sort of the grassroots or ground level support. They've come trumps. They've won a massive 235 out of 288 seats, at least as of earlier on Sunday when I checked. And this is a total sort of domination, right? This is the 400 par sort of number that we finally seem to have, after the Lok Sabha elections were less than what the BJP alliance had hoped for. But again, let's start with a couple of things, Vignesh. One is this outcome actually goes against the results in the Lok Sabha elections in May. And traditionally or conventionally, over the last 10, 11 years, we have all sort of come to believe that Narendra Modi, Amit Shah at the top, you would do better than at the state, right? But here that's flipped, one. And secondly, simplistically, does this mean that the voters of Maharashtra have endorsed the sort of political slicing and dicing and, cutting off factions and pulling them with offer of ministerships and so on? These two factors, if you can sort of address, Vignesh, and then tell us what your take on what worked for the BJP alliance, where did the Congress alliance slip, and so on.
Thank you very much, Manu. I mean, I will try and do justice to all the questions. And thank you very much for having me here. I've been following this podcast for a while now. Not all, but mostly, I think over 25, definitely, yes. Um, so, to start with, in fact, I'd like to start my answer with the vote share difference, which will give a clarity in terms of why this kind of. I mean, I'd call the Maharashtra elections as a, in terms of a post. If one were to do a postmortem, at the face of it, it's one-way traffic. There's a 13% vote share difference between Mahayuti and Mahavikas Aghadi. So, and in electoral terms, and when there is first past post system, even a 3% vote difference would actually mean a sweep. And you multiply it by 4 times, it's actually one-way traffic in one way or the other. In this context, there are three elements that I'd want to sort of speak about. One is over the last 10 years, you rightly sort of spoke about the last 10 years, there has been a steady party fragmentation in Maharashtra. What was otherwise a bipolar fight in 2014 is now otherwise a six-way fight, which became two-way with three alliances that were co-opted together. It was not an alliance that was forged on the lines of discourse resource personnel matrix, but it was a very tactical alliance to try and aggregate votes, which did not happen. At least on the Mahavikas Aghadi side, that was very blatant. And with respect to the BJP, I think, or the Mahayuti, I think the success was because they were not directionally opposed to each other, although they were maybe, in degree terms different from one another, which is the NCP breakaway, the Shiv Sena breakaway, and the BJP were almost on the same terms in terms of the discourse or the ideology that they were propagating. Uh, um, and I can tell you multiple examples, but then the quick example that comes to the top of my mind is the Aditya Thackeray's interview with News Laundry, for instance, is one example where you would see that kind of an ideological or offering being very ambiguous. And these are things that people are very, very astutely watching. At least that's the sense that we got, and we have a bunch of researchers on the field. A couple of my own friends were doing surveys as well. So all of this put together, that's the sense that we got, that people were astutely looking for what the messaging is on the ground. And between 2014 Lok Sabha election, which is just over 6 months ago, and now, um, though the time period is short, the elections are completely different. And in a state like Maharashtra, decoupling of voters between of decoupling of voting behavior between a national election and a state election is not new. I think your question comes from a position because we've seen in a state like Tamil Nadu that we belong to, being where where there is a coupling of voting behavior, and Punjab under Amrinder Singh also had that. That was a big achievement to sort of make people vote very similarly in both state and national elections. The but then the important aspect of such voting or similar voting between a national and a state election will be very divergent or very different discourses. So, for instance, what the alliance in the winning alliance in Tamil Nadu had, or even a losing alliance for that matter, had run the elections with in 2021 were considerably different from what they ran with in 2024. But I think the hangover of the 2024 national election did not sort of wear out, and then the Mahavikas Aghadi went with the same discourse, and that did not resonate with people. With state elections, the expectations are considerably different, and this is something that even an election manifesto consultative committee organizer will understand, that when you go with to draft an election manifesto to people, the kinds of requests that they have, at least the large share of India's poor, agricultural class, and women, they have very different things to ask uh, of
So just to
people.
quickly butt in here, so you're saying politically, sorry, ideologically, there was ambiguity. People sort of saw version one and then a slightly like version one in a different form, right? They didn't really have an alternative. That is one. The second thing you're trying to say is that there was change between the national issues and the local issues, and these were not addressed. Meaning, the Agadi MVA did not address the state level or local issues on the ground, right? Now, can you tell us anything about the campaign tactics or strategies that they were used, whether they clicked? A lot of people have now sort of attributed, at least, very anecdotally speaking, yesterday and today, that a lot of this goes to one of the women cash incentive schemes, right? I mean, is it that simplistic? Is it just because they have a direct beneficiary scheme, that's why? Or is there any data around this? Did you see anything?
um, I think the cash benefit scheme was did play a role. It was correlational, and it and and I think Eknath Shinde's government gave a semblance of stability when there is this kind of a forking of votes and of parties, and when you see large scale defections from one faction to the other, almost on a weekly basis. The voters are generally looking for a semblance of stability, and the Mahayuti had stability, or represented stability. And in fact, a survey by a researcher called Ashish Ranjan recently uh, also said that net the leadership popularity of the Mahayuti was higher than that of Mahavikas Aghadi. So if you were to look at strategies, Maharashtra can be looked at in six different sub-regions. And in these six different sub-regions, if I have to quickly run through, there's Vidarbha, Western Maharashtra, Mumbai, Thane, and Konkan, Marathwada, and then Khandesh or Northern Maharashtra. And the BJP, because of its, or the Mahayuti, because of its resource strength and also party cadre strength, was able to have sub-regional strategies for these regions. And yes, there were external supports in the form of engineered defections, and at the same time governance that was or government in power, and at the same time there are a lot of reports about the election commission being in favor, but all of that is external. But to have a 13% vote share difference, there has been an internal push factor as well, which is the party's work on the ground. Um, and there has been, and this is something that can be compared to the Haryana election as well. So there was the Jat vote in Haryana that practically one party wanted to go after, or one group wanted to go after, but the Jats were not. There was no unified voting behavior of the Jats. The Jats were not cultivated like that at all. They were very very sub-regional, and then family oriented, at times village oriented caste group, which only come together when you have a leader of the stature of, let's say, Sir Chotu Ram, late Sir Chotu Ram. And when there is a fragmentation within the, and when there is a fragmentation of a political party, then such caste groups become interest groups. And when they become interest groups, they are more into negotiations and not unified voting. And that's the same with Marathas. Marathas, yes, they are one third of the population, but then from the Shetatkari movement, they have had a sense of fraternity across the community. And Sharad Pawar was one of the, or continues to be one of the towering leaders, but his halo has been humbled over the years because his party is fragmented. He's not the same person. He garners respect but does not garner the kind of pull. So therefore, the the fracturing within the caste group was on the lines of caste, otherwise a fraternal group, becoming a lot more of an or behaving a lot more like an interest group. You juxtapose that with the BJP's cultivation of the OBCs. There is a research of by one of my juniors in one of my friends and colleagues in TIS, who's been working on the OBC mobilization of the BJP since the 80s. This has been then the BJP has been cultivating them as a voter group since the 1980s, as a support group and then a voter group. They have not moved at all.
Is identity politics? Sorry, Vignesh. Is identity politics something that was played out in these elections? Why I'm asking, you see, NCP and Shiv Sena are by and large Maharashtra parties, right? Like they represent Maharashtrian interests. Now, clearly, you had a national party, the BJP, come in and break these, right? I think that sentiment is, at least whether you support it or otherwise, that is taken as a granted. That's a fact, right? Now, on top of this, was there no undercurrent or no concern that the BJP, a national party, has come and tried to break this the parties that represent Maharashtrian interests?
I think a regional party and a regional identity will only work if it is democratized enough, if it can be a supra local identity that everybody has claim to. I think the Maharashtrian regional identity has been an exclusive club good, not a public good, much like an Andhra Pradesh identity. In that case, again, the Dravidian identity is considerably broad, widespread, and considerably democratized. But that's not the case with the Maharashtrian identity. A Maharashtra, a Maharashtra identity or the Maratha identity are synonymous, and that's problematic because in the graded inequality caste structure, and I would not shrink it to identity politics because why are these identities asserting? In my sense, I mean, one of the most influential scholars of this century, Nancy Fraser, speaks about it on three tenets: recognition of particularistic grievances, redistribution of resources and opportunities, and representation in power. As long as an identity or a political offering is able to manage these three aspirations of people, those communities will come together. That can be a supra-local identity like the Dravidian identity, or even a Telugu identity or the Maratha identity. But that was not the case with Maharashtra, is my analysis or my assessment. And therefore, the BJP was able to do this. From the 50s, the Congress has not moved away from its Dalit, and that to a particular kind of Dalit and the Maratha vote. And this is even after the NCP broke away. So, which means there was a lot of space for the BJP to sort of engage with. And the government, through a government in power, they were able to reach out to one of the most stable and bankable voters, a voter group, which is the women. Because in terms of yes, their the representation is a problem vis-a-vis women, but in terms of voter turnouts, they have shown a steady growth over the last few decades. And and with a lot of migrant labor work and things like that, agriculture has also become feminized in India to a large extent, and women do show up, be it self-help groups and etc. So the Ladki Behan scheme has been an attempt to, yes, patronize women, but the other part of it is you have a stable vote share in the form of the OBCs that have not moved at all, and they have not been tapped into by anybody else. And in fact, when we discuss Jharkhand, you will actually see that the BJP strategy there failed because one guy was able to sway the Kudmi Mahato votes away from the BJP, and therefore they lost. But make no mistake, their vote share is still 5% different. Congress and JMM put together is around 38 and BJP is 33, which means their core votes have not moved. And if you look at it on a map, they have encircled Jharkhand in terms of victory, which is the central tribal region continues to sort of be what it is. And a lot of people may say that the infiltrator campaign had failed, but it had not, because the victories have been around the peripheries, and the core. It's just that the central tribal people and then Kudumi Mahatos, the OBCs, did not buy into the BJP's narrative, but
Before,
but the middle class did.
before we go to Jharkhand, and I'm sure people who are of the Congress inclination will be keen to hear about this. But I just wanted to maybe swing past Mithali and Ruchir, whether what they had in their mind on the Maharashtra election outcome. Mithali, do you want to go first, based on what Vignesh has said and otherwise?
Yeah, thanks, Manu. And really fascinating to see what happened over the weekend with Maharashtra. I think from what Vignesh is saying, and this is sort of an observation that I share and I wrote about as well in my column, which is that there are similarities with Haryana in the sense that I think the BJP has realized that with some of these states, the popularity contest and putting faces before agendas is not working. What is working and worked in Haryana as well as it has in Maharashtra is really going hyper local. Even if you look at the seats that were lost in the general elections, if you look at how those 7 or 8 seats have sort of panned out in these state elections, it's completely different from party to party. There is no consistency even there. So I think going hyper local has really helped this time round in Maharashtra. There's two questions that I wanted to ask Vignesh actually. One is that what's your reading of what you've seen, Vignesh, particularly in the agrarian areas? Because that really fascinated me. I think a large part of the BJP's loss in the general elections was basically an anti-onion vote, right? The onion export ban came in and the farmers voted with their feet. They were not happy with that. So one is, what do you think the agrarian trend has been this time round? And the second, I guess, it's a slightly wider question. Uh, I will protect this journalist's identity, but about 4 or 5 days back, I was speaking with a local journalist about what they saw coming in Maharashtra. And the clarity of the observation was actually stunning. It was that it is going to be a victory for the BJP, Shinde Shiv Sena combine, and Ajit Pawar. The communal card is not so strong in Maharashtra, but it's clearly going to be a victory for them. And went on to say the BJP is going to be the single largest party. What I'm trying to understand is why is it that the opposition, and we saw this in Haryana as well, receives this information with such shock. There is such shock to the system, which is that this is completely against what we had seen coming. Now, either there is a complete disconnect with what is happening on the ground, the grassroots, that last mile grassroots connectivity is snapping, or there is a reluctance to accept what may be the obvious. Sometimes when you go into some of these contests, people say this is pitching hard, it's going to be a tough and tight contest. I'm a little amazed at what the opposition's reaction is when they keep saying, I can't get my head around this, I can't accept this. Where is the disconnect happening, Vignesh? Because people could see it. So why is it that an opposition party whose job it is to be out there in the state connecting with every constituency and every seat is not getting it?
Thank you, Mitali. In fact, I'll answer it in the order that you asked because I think the agrarian question is easier. The second one is tricky. In terms of the agrarian question, there are two points that I'd want to say. One is the defections in this in between in the last 6 months. So uh, the defections played out in a way at the end of it because you have so many cooperatives. There is a sense of there is a fraternal ethos that prevails, and which borderlines with a lot of patronage. Either it's a client patron equation, or it's a fraternal equation, or it's a fraternal environment. Both these being the case, the local influencer is able to convince, or has been able to convince, the voter or his own supporters to vote for him or her, given the kind of in the context of the stability that Eknath Shinde would bring in. And if I was to sort of rephrase all of this, the fact that there have been a series of there have been a series of defections, and the national election or the union or the general elections did not turn out the way that they actually needed to have. uh, Consider the farmers or the consider the farmers to be interest groups. At the end of it, I need to negotiate with a state government, which is in turn dependent on the union government. And last time around, when there was a possibility to topple all of it, we did vacuum, right? But in this context, uh, there are two problems. One is I need to work with the guy irrespective of if I like him or no. And two, in the union, the toppling has not happened. And I'll add one more attempt. I'll add one more, footnote. 5 or 6 out of 10 important influencers have switched sides to Mahayuti, which is they're already on this side, which gives me lesser option to express my opposition. And this is also not the time for me to sort of assert myself in the way, because I've already taken a gamble once in the general election. And now this is from the side, from the demand side, from the voter side. Look at it from the from the side of the candidates. Has the opposition, or has Mahavikas Agadi taken out a rally on the lines of, let all farmers march, something on the lines of what Manoj Harangi Patil did some 6 7 months ago? Has there been a big procession? And this also sort of, is tangentially comparable to the Muslims, for instance, which is a very strong vote base, but their vote also has been considerably fractured, if not entirely. At least 20-30% of Muslim vote fracturing is a big deal. So, this then boils down to uh, 2 points. One is, am I able to aggregate all the votes that are available to me? And number two, am I then catering to those votes so that I can collect those votes? If this discourse clarity does not exist, make no mistake, there is already 1 or 2 women in every household that are getting money from the government. So I already have a bid only on 3 votes out of the 4, which in all possibility can become just 2 if there's a migrant labor involved. So, I think if we were to not make it so unit level economics, even if you were to look at the aggregate, I do have 2 blocks of people or 3 blocks of people that I'm engaging with constantly or have historically. Am I collecting all of their votes? If that's the case, then you wouldn't see the 13% difference. You would see a 3% difference. So, did you collect the entire Dalit vote? Probably not, because Prakash Ambedkar was taking some. Did you collect all the Muslim vote? Probably not, because OIC created an impact, did not collect enough votes, but also a few votes went to Mahayuti. Did you collect all the Maratha votes? Not necessarily, because there are multiple candidates in a constituency. There were proxies. All sorts of people sort of taking all kinds of votes. But on the other side, do you see that kind of a pilferage or leakage on the BJP side? No. How are they doing it? And this is not rocket science. This is essentially old school, engagement. Am I engaging with someone every day or every week? Now then, coming back to the question of why are the opposition so surprised, that then boils down to the dissonance in the resource discourse and personal matrix, which is the opposition parties do not have enough resources. That's not necessarily true of Maharashtra. Yes, Mahavikas Agadi could have brought in resources. And then in terms of discourse, there was ambiguity, as I mentioned before. In terms of personal, are you working together? Because if 2 leaders shake hands, does not mean the party cadres also will work together. Party cadres need to be put in a place and also sort of, considerably incentivized, because in many cases, a party cadre who's worked for the local leader there is giving up on his own seat, so that uh, uh, another party, an alliance party that was otherwise your opponent, was winning. And this is something that the Congress did to itself in in Karnataka as well in 2018 and 23. There are at least 40 seats in the South Karnataka where it's just Congress and JDS fighting together, and suddenly you can't cobble up just because two leaders shake hands doesn't mean the cadre will come together. And the second thing is communication does not go through. Is there a leader cadre proximity? You read the Indian Express coverage on Madhya Pradesh, you will see the cultivation of beneficiaries as volunteers and volunteers as party cadres. And that the kind of digital and physical proximity that they have with the leadership is immense. But that kind of cadre leader proximity does not exist in the Congress or in the opposition as we see it now.
I think my question, and we can move on to Jharkhand after this. It's a brief one, which is that BJP obviously had a very large victory, and some might say that they could have gone out on their own. Obviously, the stability point is important, what you've highlighted. But my question is it also about the Maratha identity, which you touched upon, for them to stay in the alliance? Could they have actually run this election on their own?
No, I don't think so. It wouldn't be. Now we see 1 plus 3, 1 plus 1 is equal to 3, sort of an outcome. There is a force multiplier, and the Maratha identity was fractured, and that was very, very important for them. Eknath Shinde has emerged in one way or the other. So, so so as much as possible you puncture the other side, and as much as possible you have your own people. This is something that they do in Bihar. This is something that they've done in now in Maharashtra, and this is something that they've done in Jharkhand as well. Even in that defeat story, you will see these similar trends.
Yeah, so let's touch on that. I mean, Jharkhand was the other major election, and the results are out. Different outcome for BJP in this case. The Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, led by Hemant Soren, had a clear victory, 34 seats out of 56. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, 56 out of 81. And then separately, the opposition, led by NDA, managed to win 24 seats. Why was that so different? I think you touched upon the tribal identity. Perhaps we can start there. What do you think about how that transpired?
The BJP did not have a buy-in in the way that it had vis-a-vis the Maratha leaders. So the people that they engineered defections of could not stand up to or could not cause the kind of dent that the NCP defection or the Shiv Sena defection caused, if I speak comparatively. But as let's just speak about Jharkhand as is. In Jharkhand, the BJP does not have a stake in the tribal identity as it exists already. They have a stake in reframing it. For instance, so the Christian tribal hyphenation needs to be Hindu-ised somehow, Hindu Adivasi versus Christian tribal. So there is a Sarna code already that they are very uncomfortable with. There is a there's a Christianity angle that they are uncomfortable with. It's not a neatly drawn identity, which is very unlike the Maratha identity, which is very, very Hinduized. Jyotiba Phule's hangovers gone long past. It only exists with a few OBC/Maratha leaders, but it's largely Shivaji. For all that he stood, he is a Hindu icon today. Okay, and there's a book Incarcerations by Al Pasha, and also Challenging Caste by Ajaz Ashraf that speak about it in detail. But in Jharkhand identity, it is still, and the state's also new, isn't it? They've not had enough time. I mean, the kind of time that they had in Maharashtra is not the case, but they've already made their inroads. And there's this researcher friend of mine who told me there is this about their engagement with tribals as well. And I saw this in West Bengal when I was consulting for the TMC at the time. The kind of inroads that they have through Ekal Vidyalayas, or even with Birsa Munda, for instance. Birsa Munda statue is at least 15 kilometers off into the jungle of any kind of a Pakka road. And a leader like Mr. Amit Shah has been there at least 4 times in a year. If that's the case, the party cadre has been at least there 12 times. I mean, so that's the kind of inroads, but they still have their discomforts. But so therefore, the other approach is to again go to non-tribal people, which is the Kudmi Mahatos, for instance. But then they did not expect the Jairam Mahato, a 29-year-old, to sort of sway the votes away from them. And then they went to the middle class and the infiltrators idea. So net, you see a 33% result. Even on the day that they get defeated, they are still only 3 or 4 percentage points behind. And in the first past post vote system, it is considerable, but it's not a 13%.
Is this the new Congress approach in states? I mean, across the board, the way they're basically staying afloat is partnering with local parties. Is this the only way Congress gets power now?
I mean, but they didn't
See,
in
as far as I see it,
Sorry.
sorry, Mitali.
even in Maharashtra, like they tried the partnering, but that didn't quite work. So, and it's quite ironic. Sorry, Richard, just quickly, that after the result from Haryana came, a lot of senior leaders from the Uddhav Thackeray Shiv Sena gave sort of press comments saying, this is unfortunate. This is what's happening with the Congress. Whenever they are faced in direct contest with the BJP, they just can't stand. But it looks like even in a combined contest in Maharashtra, that didn't stand either. But Vignesh, please.
No, I mean, I'll just give some numbers. This is easy, I think, this question, which is Congress as it is today, and I have data between 1989 to 2019. 24, I have not tabled it. I have not sort of logged in into my sheet that I generally use. So between 1989 and 2019, 1989 being the reason why 1989 is because that's when the regional parties or non-national parties or coalition governments started coming to play. Isn't it? So between 1989 and 2019, what you see in the last 30 years is between Congress and BJP, they only hold 50 to 55 percentage of vote share. And all the other non-Congress, non-BJP parties hold the other 45 to 55% vote share. So it's half and half. So until 2004 it was the communists that had a good share in the non-Congress, non-BJP space. But after 2000, since 2009, it's been regional parties largely. So this, when you translate this, as of 2014 and 19, there are at around 180 to 220 seats, and on a very good day, then probably 250 seats, which is half of these seats where the direct contest is between Congress and the BJP. And the BJP strike rate, at least in 2014 and 19, have been 90%. So 9 on 10 fights against the Congress, where there is no third party or even a semblance of a decent third party, of a decent third rank, the BJP is winning all guns blazing. So this starts from, let's say, Gujarat going up to Haryana, and then you come east till about just before Bihar or a little bit of Bihar. That's all. So if you count these seats, so to answer your question, yes, Congress needs to go with regional parties because as it stands today, it only is uh, a decent second rank holder in 220 to 250 seats, not more than that. So, but the BJP is a strong contender in, I think, at least 300 to 350, and that 50 seats matter a lot because the BJP is on now an expansion mode.
I'm just thinking from the perspective of what happened to the chief minister of Jharkhand. Did that play a role? Considering we have Delhi elections around the corner, that's question one. Question two, did the Congress JMM alliance chemistry, was it any better than the Mahavikas Agadi in Maharashtra, according to you, or was that not a major factor?
Second question first, it's the same, I think. I think it's the same, but just that the regional heavyweights of the Congress stuck to their playbook and managed to win those elections. But in Maharashtra, they needed some support, is my sense. Again, this is based on some field work, not a lot of field work, but some field work. And so that's second question first. And is Soren is equal to Kejriwal? I don't think so. Yes, there Soren has, but that's because he's son of soil. He stands for tribal identity, and also he's one of those very few leaders that can actually challenge Hindutva as is in the manner that probably very few people can. So instead of using euphemisms, he directly gets to the he hits the nail on its head. And that kind of a discourse, it alienates a few people, yes, but it consolidates his core, his in group. His in group is consolidated. His out group again depends upon his governance style, and the people that anyway don't like him are not going to. So that makes him a strong leader, but not necessarily a very not necessarily a leader that can be scaled. On the flip side, Arvind Kejriwal, he's high on the governance side, but where is his ideological offering? What does he stand for? I mean, uh, Aam Aadmi Party Aam Aadmi's party's model of politics, as explained by Raghav Chadda, is of governance and welfare. But as we have seen in Andhra Pradesh, for instance, before, or Odisha in the last round, or even now, as long as welfare is not laced with some kind of an ideological or a socio-political messaging, it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick. So in Delhi, can he pull off? Can't he pull off? Again, that's something that needs to be seen. But he's not comparable to Soren in that manner.
Vignesh, I
So
have a
where does
slightly.
this leave us really? Sorry, Mitali, I was going to come to you.
Yeah, no, no,
Do you
no.
want
Go
to
on.
reflect on Jharkhand and also tell us where does this leave us, considering at the start of 20, oh sorry, in the when the elections to the 2014 Lok Sabha happened, it seemed like Congress and the India Alliance had sort of leveled up a little bit, but now losing Maharashtra, and I think Haryana was a bigger setback in some sense because it seemed to be a sure open and shut. Where does that leave the opposition according to you as well?
I actually just want to layer your question,
Bhavna.
Manu, and ask Vignesh, if you zoom out a little bit. One of the big takeaways for 2024, Vignesh, is that in every, for lack of a better term, global minority country, developed economies, any government that has gone in with inflation has seen an anti-incumbency vote. They have lost. It happened most recently now in the US as well. Essentially, prices touch voters, right? And I think to sort of broaden on Manu's point, in 2024 in the Indian general elections, we saw some signs of it. The BJP certainly came out with bruised knees and knuckles. It wasn't as clear sailing for them as they expected. But when you look at this pretty lethal cocktail, even at a state level, of food inflation, certainly, of unemployment. I mean, Maharashtra has pretty high youth unemployment even as we speak, of kind of agrarian distress. So, you've got on the one hand food inflation that's hitting the urban population, but you've also got the rural population that is not doing as well. Despite some of these kind of quite front and center economic factors, you are still seeing incumbents winning, and not just winning in cases like Maharashtra with very smooth sailing. In cases like Haryana as well, they came out quite clean. What do you think is playing there? Is it that, and I don't mean this in sort of a pedantic fashion, but is it that the voter is now not, is really not interested in taking the long view? It's kind of like, this is what I need right now, and if there's a cash transfer scheme that is providing immediate support and relief, that's working for me for now, and then I'll take a call later around the next election. Is it that, or is it something much deeper that's at play?
Thanks. So Manu, to your question, where does this leave us with any kind of the little consulting experience that I have? I think go back to basics. You find people, give them the constituency for 5 years to cultivate. You tell them, I won't disturb you for 5 years. You fight two elections. You give people constituencies and then ask them to cultivate those constituencies. If for the Congress, probably not in those 200, where things still matter or seem to matter. At least the rest of the country, and then there is a definite need of trying to bring in people that are not necessarily stalwarts, right? I mean, so let's start, try and let's do something. So, for instance, the substitution of I mean, the succession of Anantakumar, if I am not wrong, in South Bangalore, isn't it, was a very interesting choice in Tejaswi Surya, isn't it? So, not that it's a great example, but it's an analogous example. But all I'm trying to say is give a few constituencies to leaders that you know of, and then back them from at the leadership style, because uh, the party is at a stage where it needs, people that are invested in it, and not people that are necessarily engaging with it and then engaging with it on a time to time basis. I think that would be a very simple step. And this then goes back, and then support them in one way or the other. You tell them that, oh, this is the kind of support that I have. Everything else you need to cobble up. Uh, um, and this is not as if they could not think of this. There was a small campaign called Ladki Hu Lad Sakti Hu by the Congress. Probably something on those lines, but a lot more robust, where they are not disturbed at all. They are not disturbed. But again, this is a little tricky, because if you go back to Rajni Kotari, Paul Pras, etc., and from Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the central leadership and then the state leadership are always in tussle. And this is how Congress's institutional memory works. So, so Rajshekar Reddy did not have it easy when he emerged. So there is a certain, climate of you need to come despite, despite those hurdles. So I'm not saying make those hurdles go away. That's the case with the BJP as well. Any regional leader to emerge, they need to sort of have their own fight. So let that fight stay, but let the other noise sort of go away. Let the leadership support a few people. Probably start with 100 or 50, and then try and see 5 years later what happens. That's when even Congress party, if Congress party does not have 150 seats on its own, it does not have a standing to negotiate with regional parties, because the regional party seat share has not changed much. There's a 5 to 10% dip, yes, but it has not changed much with Akhilesh coming back and then Tejasvi trying to put up a fight. Now that UP and Bihar have changed in a certain way, the regional parties on the whole, or the non-Congress, non-BJP bloc, has invigorated itself in one way or the other. The math is holding. I don't know. I mean, that's a very idealistic answer. Like, oh, you all need to speak truth. So, but in terms of Mitali's question, why long view, Mitali? India is reeling under the highest income inequality. It will, in the countries that you speak of, inflation is hurting people, yes, but inflation is hurting people that matter, or the people that are able to assert. They have a certain ability to, dabble with the political economy mobilization. It takes effort, it takes money, it takes resources to fight against the system. In India, you have two problems. One is extreme income inequality. I mean, you would know this better than me. And the second thing, that the poor can't even sustain. So therefore, this thousand rupees that are being given is 13 to 14 percentage of monthly per capita consumption expenditure, according to the NABARD report. If I take that away, then a family loses savings at all, and even food probably. If that is the kind of extent, then you would need to find some kind of an intermediary that's leading that fight for the subalterns. Subalterns themselves can't necessarily resist and assert. And now, from that coming to fore, now bring in something called the caste system, which is subjugation and moderation of aspirations of people. Just to say that, oh, you're supposed to be like this because that's how you are. Since 2019, I've been looking at a lot of these revisionist histories that are sold at 10 rupees, 12 rupees in Uttar Pradesh. Oh, you're mochi. Now get a certificate. We had another movement in Tamil Nadu against father's mochi becoming son mochi. I mean, son mochi becoming mochi because his father was. A cobbler becoming a cobbler because his father was. But that is not the case in Uttar Pradesh, because there is now a 10 rupees book that says that, oh, you were the guys who made, shoes for the Mahabharat war. You're able to give them a semblance of a glorious past, and then some kind of welfare. So what happens net, you take rights out of the system. Between 2004 and 14, all four of us understand the RBI data set. We run it through any system, we will clearly tell that between 2004 and 14 and 14-24, 4 and 14 has been much better. But that was rights based. There was an impersonality in the delivery of goods. But this is This is different. This is welfare. You take rights of the picture, you have welfare in place, and then you have a notion of this is your duty towards the larger good. It helps. At least that's what Assis Nandi says. That such prospective ideas help people than retrospective, achievements. Best case, Ram Mandir didn't work. And again, Lord Keynes said, in the long run, everybody's dead. So I don't think people who are engaging with the short-term, deals of the parties, I don't see it's a problem for them. I think the political class that is supposed to sort of stand up for them needs to get its act together, because only they have the resources to fight the election. The Center for Media Studies will tell us that.
Ruchir, I'm just coming back to you here because I know that you have always views that are contrarian to what some of what we feel. As somebody who's sort of watched these elections perhaps more dispassionately than the three of us, what do you how do you see this playing out going forward for the key states which are to come next year? So that is Delhi, Bihar in 2025, and then in 2026 we have Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Assam, and West Bengal.
Some of my questioning earlier was leading up to this, which is I think there's only one national party at the moment that actually has any sort of organized or ground game. And I mean, even so, I was in Maharashtra this week, and I was talking to some of the voters, and I was just asking them, "Hey, what do you think? Who are you going to vote for?" And it was very clear, like at least speaking to, in my case, mostly urban Pune or people who come, like some of my team who come from different parts of Maharashtra, that for them, who are like people who are not as political, for them in their daily lives, like they found that BJP offers these growth prospects, or the current alliance offer these growth prospects. So I think it's not just. I mean, Vignesh is bang on in terms of sort of people getting something in their hand matters more than anything else. But and so ultimately, all of this comes down to prosperity or hope of prosperity. So for me, I think the thing that Congress really has to understand if it has to have a chance of coming back is we have to move beyond like the. I think rights are important, but when you can't put food on the table, rights don't really matter, And I think ultimately elections are vote on people's bellies. Um, yeah. Should we move to Have You Heard? I mean, we've like been deep here, and maybe we can end on a lighter note. Who
Yeah,
wants to
Absolutely.
go
I
first?
think I think it's been a pretty heavy 50 minutes or so. I think getting deep diving into the elections and electoral outcomes. So shall we move to Have You Heard? And Richard, do you want to go first? Because I'm sure you've
Um,
got something that is going to blow our minds.
no, it won't blow your mind, but it surprised me at least is the Securities and Exchange Commission in the U.S., which was in the news this week for some other reasons, actually released a story that they have made $8.2 billion in income this year from fines. And that made me wonder how much does SEBI make out of fines? SEBI is our equivalent, and our stock market is 1/10. And turns out that we have made $40 million. This is data from the NSE website, but not $40 million this year. $40 million from the last 4 years combined, some of which was this year. So I realized our enforcement system does not fine as much as the US. Although I should also say that the more than half of the fines that SEC did fine this year came from the crypto universe. I think
okay.
Gary Gensler obviously has a very specific agenda, and that played a role. But it's a lot of money, $8.2 billion to charge for fines. So that was my Have You Heard. It was like a really interesting discovery.
Very nice, very useful. Thank you. Shall I go to Mitali
Yes.
next before coming to Ignesh?
I was going to say, Ruchir, you're going down a slippery slope now because maybe the SEBI doesn't earn as much because it doesn't fine as much because it goes into some things that then actually there's nothing wrong. कुछ नहीं हुआ किसी ने किसी को कोई पैसा नहीं दिया. So maybe that is the problem, and the solution is to start doing their job.
Yeah, we don't investigate hard enough. That's probably
Yeah,
true.
exactly right. Do your job. I'm going back to our favorite topic, which is books. and I have this book called Beastly Tales by Vikram Seth. He is an author that I just love and adore, and I think when I die, if someone gives me a book along with me to be buried or burnt or whatever, I'd be very happy. But it's very special because in Oxford you have these bookstores where they keep really old books, and this one is actually autographed by Vikram Seth, and he gave it in 2001 to this bookshop called St. Philip's in Oxford. And if you are a parent of a young child, anyone above the age of 5, I would say try and find a copy of it. They're just the most beautifully written little poems and limericks about animals, and no one writes as beautifully and with as rhythmic a meter as Vikram said. So that's my have you heard.
Okay.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that recommendation. Going straight on the Amazon order list. Vignesh, would you like to go next with your have you heard or seen, where you want to share an interesting tidbit or fact that you learned this week with our listeners and
I don't know
viewers?
how interesting, but thank you. I actually was in Istanbul last week. So there's this museum within the Topkapi Palace where the Ottomans had the best time, and I saw the staff of Moses. Okay, which is interesting. And I said, "Oh, staff of Prophet Moses and all of that." And then I saw another staff, but that was very similar to Sengol. Okay, and then I realized. And then when I read through it, then I realized that it was actually a staff given by Indian Muslims to the Caliph at the time. So the Indian Muslims had given because the Ottoman king was also the leader, the religious leader of the Islamic world till they were defeated in the 1919, isn't it? In the So I saw that. I mean, I was trying to sort of share the photo here, but I will share it with you, Manu, and so that you can send it forward. But it looked very similar, and then my question then went back to how did this a scepter making come about? Where is this coming from? Is this the Bhakti to Sufi move or the Sufi to Bhakti move? Because I don't know. I mean, and that's very interesting. And then yeah, and also because I'm interested in these practices in temples in these in the non Vedic temples in India, and how they are being changed now. And I actually have a theory that I bored Manu with, which I won't bore you guys with. But then in that context, I actually came across this stuff. So it was fun. Yeah.
That
Fan-
sounds great. I will look up the image. Manu, go ahead.
Yes.
Fantastic. I'm going to now look a little deeper into this to see whether Sengol does have a Mughal influence, and then see the faces of the people who've been advocating to put the Sengol in the Lok Sabha. My have you heard is a little bit to do with my profession in the last couple of days. So this week is the 75th year of the adoption of the Constitution. So I had actually spent a day at the OP Jindal University in Sonepat. They have set up they're holding a 3-day conference there to democratize awareness around the Indian Constitution, which I think is fantastic and something we must cherish. But they've set up something called the Constitution Museum, which I had a quick look at, and it is mind blowing. It is spectacularly done. It has a bust of each of the, I think, 300 odd people who drafted the constitution as part of the Constituent Assembly. It has various aspects of the constitution explained in a very illustrative and engaging manner. But one of the most sort of striking images is that, I mean, there's a whole section on Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, but there's one. I think it's a picture hologram of Ambedkar, but they've sort of made him sit like that famous, Abraham Lincoln pose, sitting. Usually, all
Okay.
the statues or most of the statues of Ambedkar are with him standing and holding the Constitution, but here he's sitting. Very striking, very interesting, but a beautifully done, I guess, tribute to 75 years of our constitution. And if anybody is interested in understanding the constitution a little bit more, you just need to read one speech, which is the one that is given by Ambedkar to the Constituent Assembly on 25th November 1949. So the day before it was adopted. So where he summarizes the whole constitution, and he talks about his own anxieties, and very famously says, I don't know if the constitution will survive. I don't know if the democracy of this country will survive. I don't know if the country will survive, right? But we've done the best we can. Anyway, maybe on that poignant note, we should sort of stop. But Ruchir, any final
Yeah.
words?
That might be the tagline of so many nations. Hopefully, we will survive. Right? We've done our best. Thank you all. Thank you, especially Vignesh, for giving your time today. That was really insightful. Backing up a lot of your analysis with data. Always so grateful to have information that actually is really well considered. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening and making it this far. We're always grateful that you listen to us. We welcome any feedback. We're at indiadialoguepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us all on X. Vignesh is at KRV Tweets. On Twitter, Manu is at Manuraj1983. Mitali is at Mitali Live. I am at Ruchir_P. The dialogue is at TID_podcast, the India Dialogue _podcast. You can also find us on YouTube. Thank you again for listening, and we look forward to seeing you in a week. Bye.